Greetings, everyone. Today we'll be interviewing Dr. Surve in light of the World Economic Forum that will be happening in January 2024 this week. So, Dr. Surve, the world's preeminent meeting, the World Economic Forum in Davos, with billionaires, CEO of global corporations, 200 world leaders, and about 60 heads of state are about to attend. And we would just like to get some insights from you regarding the WEF. So, could you share with us, first of all, your journey with the WEF, how it began and what really inspired you to join the World Economic Forum?
Well, the World Economic Forum is, of course, the preeminent business forum in the world. It's been established for, I think, probably 75 years. I'm not quite sure exactly, but I know it's a long time. Founded by Klaus Schwab. It's very different to the original World Economic Forum. Today, you'll find, as you've quite correctly said, billionaires, you'll find heads of state, you'll find heads of the big corporations in the world. You find tech pioneers, young global leaders, global shapers, the heads of all the major NGOs in the world like Greenpeace and Oxfam and similar, multilateral organization heads, etc. So it's a very different World Economic Forum. It remains a very important institution, and it does set the agenda for the world in a way that people take the cue in terms of what's going to happen in the world from what is said at the World Economic Forum. In terms of our participation, well, the World Economic Forum works like this. It's essentially by invitation by the World Economic Forum. You don't get to join. You don't get to apply or anything like that. It doesn't work like that. The World Economic Forum identifies the world's largest companies, and that's how the World Economic Forum started. The world's 500 largest companies, your huge corporations like your Microsofts of the world, your Apples, etc. But over and above that, the World Economic Forum, obviously as it has grown, which to about 1,000 companies in total in the world today, identifies companies that they believe firstly meet the financial threshold in terms of their value. They identify billionaires, they identify companies that have an impact on the continent, on technology possibly. So there's a very diverse criteria, but the bulk of it is your size in terms of your value. And so we were invited as one of only 2 South African companies in 2007. The other was Sasol, and there were 5 African companies invited in 2007 to join the World Economic Forum that year, and what they refer to as the new champions for the world's global growth companies or the world's fastest growing companies in terms of innovation, etc. We got invited partly because of our investments in South Africa, but also our investments in tech companies, overseas as well at the same time, and our other businesses. So South Africa itself has about more or less 20 companies that are part of the World Economic Forum. The major banks, the ones that are fighting us at the moment, are all there. So we'll see all the CEOs there, a very uncomfortable setting. The major mining corporations like Anglo Americans will be there. And then, of course, there'll be, I think the entrepreneurial billionaires would really be Motsepe, Kwisbecker, and myself. The only 2 black participants that are business leaders at the World Economic Forum, and has been like that for at least a decade, and that's Patrice and myself. The only blacks that have been black individuals that run large corporations or have founded large businesses that have been invited by the World Economic Forum. So those are the people that we'll see. We'll see the head of all the major corporate banks in the world, of course.
Well, thank you for explaining giving more context to what the World Economic Forum is and how it is that Sekunjalo got involved as one of the largest global growth companies from South Africa. But even in engaging in the World Economic Forum discussions and going every year, I think you're a veteran for over 10 years now at the World Economic Forum. So what is it that really inspired you to continue being in the World Economic Forum? Why is it that you want to make an impact with it?
Okay, yes. No, you are right. I am, technically speaking, a World Economic Forum veteran. What that means is that someone that's, attended the World Economic Forum more than 10 times. And we always joke about it because every year at the World Economic Forum, there's a ceremony which Klaus Schwab has for those that have been from the forum either more than 5 times or 10 times or 15 times or 20 times or more. There are a few that have actually been there since almost since inception. It's very unusual, however, for someone to attend the World Economic Forum so long, because if you're the CEO of a corporation, you generally tend not to last for that period of time. If you're CEO of a university, a vice chancellor also, you don't, or the head of a global peace organization. So the fact that, we receive our pin every year, I think this is now my 14th Davos meeting, even though we've been at the World Economic Forum since 2007. I've also uniquely attended Davos as a doctor accompanying some former presidents, and I've also attended as a social entrepreneur. But as a businessman in our own right, it's been since we became a member of World Economic Forum in 2007. Look, I go to World Economic Forum for 3 major reasons. The first is that it's an important business networking opportunity for our businesses, for our partners, and for new businesses that we intend to have. So we were a partner to 14 multinationals on the African continent, the likes of Siemens and Nokia, Saab, British Telecom, and others. And it was always a good place to meet their CEOs and chairmen at these meetings. And that's part of what we did. And any new investments we were looking at, we also met the heads of those corporations. Like, for example, now I've received about 20 invitations to meet with the heads of major tech companies, whether it's AI, whether it's cybersecurity, at this year's World Economic Forum. The second reason I go to the World Economic Forum is because it's an ideas place. And if you want to see the trends in the world, what's going to happen in the world, because they have the world's best experts there, whether they're from consulting companies, whether they are from corporations, whether they are from governments, you can really get a sense of the direction the world is going to. And so that allows you to kind of be ahead of the curve. As they say in ice hockey, don't look where the puck was, look where the puck is going to. Right? So it's the same for the world. So it kind of gives you a head start for the year, and you can kind of see from a business, social, political point of view what's going to happen more or less in the world. The third reason is that there are very few African companies or even South African companies that are part of the World Economic Forum. Very few relative to those from China, Europe, America, etc. And so it's important to be an ambassador for your country. So I've been at the World Economic Forum, from Mandela right through to Mbeki, to Zuma, to Ramaphosa. And so part of it there is to try and get international investors, the international community, to take an interest in South Africa, to invest in our country, to create jobs and employment, and to grow our economy, because we have so much high youth unemployment here. So that role as an ambassador is one I've played very seriously at the World Economic Forum.
Thank you. And also, you said that they also shape the global agenda, whether that be trend setting in business, but also you mentioned in geopolitics. So to what extent is it that business can also shape the agenda for social issues or the political arena?
Look, business is a very important part of the world today. Whether you're Chinese, the business community is very big. In Europe, in America, in Africa, the market economy dominates. There's no question about it. So you have to try and find a way that the market economy can be a force for good. And so at the World Economic Forum, you can have pure business panel discussions, or you can have discussions around how business can be used for good. And of course, that's my interest. My interest has always been people before profits. And I have a strong ESG element in terms of my thinking. So therefore, it's about, what can business do that can actually make a difference? Of course, in my view, the first thing a business does, which makes a huge difference, which people forget, is to give people employment. If you give people employment, it gives them dignity. It allows them to have a sense of pride. It allows them to have dignity. It allows them to look after their families and their communities. So employment is always so important. But there are other things that business can do. I mean, business can shape policies in a country. It can shape the environment in terms of those kind of issues. It can impact on communities in other ways. So yeah, so you take from the World Economic Forum what you want. I've been there for a long time, and I go with a very clear agenda. I'm a panelist this year at the World Economic Forum. I'm a speaker, in other words, at the forum this year, and as I've been on many other previous occasions. But I will also be attending a number of panel discussions myself in the areas of interest.
Well, the theme for this year's Davos is rebuilding trust. So why do you think that this theme is important for 2024? And which issues do you think that it's trying to address?
Trust is very important in everything that you do. Business must have trust in each other, with each other. They must have trust with the government. Government must trust each other. The people must trust the government and business. Mm. So we're living at a time where trust has been broken. We can see that because we are seeing wars in the Middle East. We are seeing wars in Europe itself. Who would have thought Europe would be facing a war today? And we are seeing, within countries, we are seeing conflicts. So that suggests a complete breakdown of trust. Also, the world population is increasingly skeptical about business leaders and don't trust them anymore, especially if you look at the profiteering that arose out of COVID, for example. So there's a lot of cynicism, skepticism, and mistrust about the role of business as being corporations wanting to simply profiteer at the expense of the people. So I think it's important to rebuild that trust. And so it's a huge task because right now the world is fractured. And fractured means that the trust levels are gone. And that means that, you have warmongers in the world that want to make money out of a fractured world, out of war, out of conflict. And then you have peace lovers that see the world in a very different way, that by working together, you can actually improve the lives of everyone. And it is good for business if you have peace and peaceful development. As the Chinese have shown, it leads to greater prosperity, for example. Mm. So I'm in that grouping that believes in peace and development and harmony, and business is a force for good. So those are always contested positions, even at the World Economic Forum. You'll find that different people have these different points of view.
Well, even as a leader, you wear different hats. In business, you seem to be an advocate for social entrepreneurship. So if you could explain how social entrepreneurship can rebuild trust, but also you're a leader in the media space. And do you see a way that what trends should be needed in media to rebuild trust in the world again?
Well, the public no longer trusts the media. That's the important point to make. They don't trust the media because increasingly the media is taking sides. And increasingly the media is not reporting in a balanced way. Sometimes the media doesn't tell the truth, and that's very sad. So and of course, with the advent of social media, people have become very skeptical about mainstream media. If you look at, I just saw a report on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that only 4 out of, I think, a few hundred articles in the US and Europe in mainstream media mentioned the fact in the headlines that the Gaza children were being killed. Now that's shocking by all means, right? Now the public will increasingly not trust the media if the media doesn't play its role of being fair and balanced and giving both points of view. And I think that's the issue of a narrative. And building trust is about, making sure that the narrative that is out there in the world is one which gives the opinion of all sides. It's very difficult to do because media owners have their own points of view. Media corporations have their own points of view. And media does take sides. There is no question that media takes sides. You look at the Russia-Ukraine war, if you look at the conflicts in Africa, if you look at the Middle Eastern conflict, if you look at China and Taiwan and the Southeast Asia seas, if you look at climate change, the media takes sides. So there's very little trust left in the media.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're also a speaker on panels this year, and you're obviously aware of the issue with media that you're passionate about and regaining trust. So is there actually an agenda which you want to pursue or introduce in this year's summit?
I think there's a lot that I would like to introduce at the summit. For me, my summit is divided up into 4 areas. Okay. The first is seeing old friends again. So once you've been to Davos so many times, you tend to build a friendship with people from all over the world, from Japan, from China, from the US, from Europe, from Africa. So seeing old friends, and we bump into each other in the conference center, which is of course limited to a few hundred people only, what they call the white badges at Davos. And so we know each other by now. So when you see each other, it's like, maybe we see each other once a year. But we also catch up on interesting things happening in their businesses or their areas. So that's my first goal for myself at Davos this year. The second is I have a set number of meetings, which are my one-on-one meetings with heads of major corporations, heads of businesses, heads of multilateral institutions. And that's about 20 meetings for this Davos trip. The third is that I will attend by invitation breakfast, lunch, and dinner meetings that I've been invited by various presidents of various countries, various heads of major corporations, from the global banks to the global media houses, such as Bloomberg, for example, to special lunches, special dinners, which is it's a closed by invitation only, but very few people, maybe at most about 50 people at a time. So that's the third area. And then the fourth area is that I will be, South Africa itself doesn't come to Davos as South Africa. There's a lot of confusion about that. Business leaders come to Davos on behalf of themselves and the corporations, where relevant. And then alongside of that, South African government is invited, with the president is invited, along with some of his ministers. So they will also attend. But we do have one session in Davos, which is South Africa meeting international investors. I always attend that, although the last session I found what the South African government officials were saying to be really difficult to believe, because they almost ignored load shedding and all the negative issues. And so investors internationally, will not trust you if you're not honest with them. We also have a South African dinner that we'll attend, that I normally attend. Yeah, and what will be interesting for me is that I will see from South Africa all the bankers that are trying desperately to shut our accounts because we are so critical of the president that they support. That will also be there. Who's also someone that's launched a campaign against us because our media house has been very critical of him. So they'll all be there. So I'm probably going to be, with my son, the only person in the room that, is directly opposed by those attending Davos. So it'll be a very interesting climate. There is another, part of Davos which I like to attend, and that's called the Cultural Leaders Dinner. They don't have it anymore. So a lot of actors, a lot of writers, a lot of interesting people in the world come to Davos. And there used to be a dinner where very few people are invited, and you just hear the most amazing stories from all over the world.
Because also other also involved in a number of other multilaterals, including being the ex-business chairperson and current media chairperson of Brics. So in the shifting global order with the rise of the Brics Alliance right now, do you think that this will be any significant conversation or discussion at the World Economic Forum this year?
No, absolutely. In fact, it's strange that you say that, because I just saw, in my inbox a mail from a couple of global leaders asking me to address them on Brics Plus. So that was a bit of a surprise. So the World Economic Forum obviously has recognized that, Brics is a major force, and there's a private meeting with a couple of important heads of state that will be discussing, with me the BRICS plus and BRICS itself. And, as the former chairman of the BRICS Business Council and the president of the 5 countries, the chairman of South Africa and the president of the 5 countries for the last 2 years of my tenureship as the BRICS chairman, we initiated the BRICS Bank, we initiated the BRICS currency, which didn't take off, but which may now take off actually. And I think people are really beginning to understand the importance of those things, which we initiated under my chairmanship. So that institution is going to be significant. As I said to you, I was pleasantly surprised to see a couple of very serious people in the world asking me to address them at a private meeting in Davos this year.
Great. Is there a message about BRICS which you want to share this year?
My message is the world must be multipolar. It's very simple. A multipolar world where you respect everybody, where you allow all countries to coexist with each other, and you allow them to engage with each other and deepen business opportunities, cooperation, work together in peace as opposed to in war, is the message that must be given. And so that's my message, as a BRICS founding member, and as South Africa as a BRICS founding member. And the world needs to get away from this bully approach, this domination approach by some Western institution. There's place in the world for everybody.
Yes, there is. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Surve, for today's interview. You've given us some very great insights into the actual dealings and inner world of the World Economic Forum and how it operates. We wish you the best for promoting a shared humanity in South Africa there for us.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Thank you for the interview.